Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're about to do 3 true motel horror stories animated. Let's get it!
My
Story
name is
uno.
James, and I recently separated from my wife, Mandy. It came completely
James
out of
and
the blue.
Mandy.
One day, she sat me down and said that it wasn't working out between us. "It's not you, it's me." I was shocked, and I tried to get more information out of
Hit you
her.
with that.
There
It's
had to
not
be a
you,
more
it's me.
specific reason, but we kept going in circles. She said that she hadn't been happy in a long time. I asked if this had anything to do with Derek, her handsome coworker. They'd been spending a lot of time together, and I'd always had my suspicions that something was going on between them. I shouldn't have said anything,
Nope.
because she started shouting about how I was accusing her over nothing. The conversation didn't end
Don't
well,
ever
obviously.
accuse. Try to get
packed
some
my stuff and
evidence.
I figured I'd give her time to be alone and think about everything. I loved Mandy so much, and I didn't want to lose her. That night, I went to my brother Parker's house to crash. He told me I could stay with him as long as I needed, but after a week, he kicked me out.
Damn.
He said that I was depressing him, and that he needed to concentrate on his own marriage.
What the hell?
I didn't have a lot of money saved up, and I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I ended up
It might be
checking into the Rosemont
you might be the
Motel,
problem, bro.
which was the only motel in my budget where I could stay long term.
You
It
can
was
stay
on the
as long as you
shadier
need.
side of town,
Week later. Fuck
surrounded
out my
by old
house.
warehouses, and the building was filthy.
Damn.
The only good thing about it was a small swimming pool at the back. I started taking a swim
Must
every
be a piece
evening
of-
after work. It was the
I
only
ain't gonna say
time when
that.
I could relax and stop
But you
thinking
must
about
not be
Mandy.
cool to hang
On my
out
third
with.
night there, I met a woman at the pool. She was young and beautiful. She introduced herself as Sarah and asked how long I was staying there. I told her that I didn't know. She seemed pretty friendly, so we got to chatting, and I explained that my wife had kicked me out, but I was still hoping that we'd get back together. Sarah seemed disappointed. I assumed she was interested in a quick hookup, but she didn't like the fact that I was still technically a married man. I asked her about herself. She said she was working for her brother, but she didn't get into any more
What?
specifics.
Working
She told
for
me
your
a little
brother.
about her life, but she kept bringing the conversation back to me and my marriage. It must have really bothered her. Still, we seemed to hit it off, and she invited me to have a drink in her room. I refused at first, but she explained that nothing was going to happen between us. It was purely platonic. I agreed, and after I went upstairs to dry off and change, I knocked on her door, room 18. She greeted me wearing loose pajamas. She held a bottle of wine that was already open. I almost changed my mind and was about to leave, but she assured me that nothing was going to happen between us. We sat at her small table and started drinking. She encouraged me to keep drinking, almost like she wanted to get me drunk.
Yeah, she's a
I
serial
went through
killer.
several glasses
Killer.
before I noticed that she was still on her first one.
Dumbass.
It seemed like she wasn't drinking at all, just pretending to.
This nigga.
I started to
Whoa.
get a really bad feeling, but I guess the alcohol was doing
Hey.
its trick. I
My
didn't
boy
leave.
depressed, huh?
We talked about normal stuff like movies and music, but every once in a while she'd ask me a question about Mandy. I don't know what got into me, probably the alcohol, but I mentioned my suspicions that Mandy had cheated on me with her coworker Derek. Her eyes widened. That seemed to really intrigue her, so she started asking me more about him. I started to really trash the guy. I didn't know him that well, and despite my suspicions, I didn't have anything against him. He always acted friendly to my face, but I was so overcome by anger over my separation that I really started laying into the guy. I said that he was an idiot who was terrible at his job. I said he was slimy and unattractive. I even mentioned his bad breath. Sarah just sat there and listened, face blank. Then she slowly stood up and walked toward her dresser. "You shouldn't have said that," she said.
What if that's his
I tried
brother?
to ask her what she meant, but before I could, she spun around with a pocket knife in her hand. She held it towards my face. I jumped out of my chair and backed away, tripping drunkenly over the carpet. "Derek is a good man," she said. "He's so much better than a loser like you." Sarah was a lot smaller and thinner than me, but she was sober and driven by pure rage.
Yeah, the feet,
She
bro,
held me
kick it.
down with one hand and used the other to drive the pocket knife deep into my shoulder.
Alright, whatever.
I screamed for help, but at a motel like this, no one was going to come to my rescue.
Big buff.
I had to
gets
fend her off
taken
myself.
Over, even though drunk.
She used her palm to drive the knife
little-
deeper. I guess the pain gave me the
Too
encouragement I needed. I pushed her off of me. She slammed against the wall. Before she could get back up, I kicked her in the side. The dresser was a foot away from her, and the motel's bulky old TV was right on top. I grabbed it and pushed it closer to the edge. I demanded to know who she was and what she wanted. I made it clear that if she didn't answer, I'd push the TV on top of her. Her knife was still sticking out of my shoulder. I was too angry to feel the pain. "It should have been easy," she said. "Why didn't you just keep drinking and keep your opinions to yourself?" "Who are you?" I demanded again. "I'm Derek's sister," she screamed from the floor. "I work for him." "What did he pay you to do?" I asked. "Nothing," she shouted. I pushed the TV so it was almost halfway off the dresser. If it fell on her, she'd be crushed. "Fine," she said. "He wanted me to get you drunk and then take some embarrassing photos. That's it. But then you started running your mouth and I couldn't stop myself." "But why?" "Blackmail, idiot," she said. "So you'd agree to the divorce. Your wife won't be with him until you sign the papers. It's nothing personal." As soon as she said that, all my anger left me. I felt this overwhelming numbness. I wordlessly walked out of the room, went to my car and drove to the hospital to get the knife removed. On the way, I called the police. Both Sarah and Derek were taken into custody. I don't know exactly what crimes they committed or what the punishment is, and I also don't know if Mandy had any idea about their plan. What I do know is that I'll find out in the trial, and I never want to see my wife again.
Straight divorce, bro. Straight fucking divorce. I don't care if she's done it
straight in my face when I stepped out of my room in the rundown motel where I stayed for the night. I noted the change in the atmosphere, and it manifested in a dry lump in my throat,
they do for women,
scraping
bro.
its way down as I struck my chest twice to assuage the discomfort. When I had dislodged it, I coughed out an airless heave. "Good heavens!" I wheezed before tucking the key into the skewed keyhole. I recalled what the host had told me about the door, and I quickly applied it. I stuck my finger just beneath the thin strip of the hinge, and I yanked it upwards. The keyhole lodged into place, giving me a perfect strip to stick the key in fully. I turned the key and it clicked shut, the wind rushing back to remind me of its unceasing presence. I pulled the key out from the keyhole slowly when I heard the jamming of keys in motion. I turned around quickly to the other rooms beside me. I studied the door, and my eyes fell on the door which I assumed the noise had come from. I paused, waiting out the final click which came to ascertain that I had not been mistaken in my guess. "Yo!" a raspy voice muttered in frustration as the door pulled open. "What the fuck are these doors?" I looked away quickly in politeness and turned around to go about my business of fetching a can of soda for my dry throat. The light in the distant building, at least half the length of a football field, offered seductive illumination which I started to amble towards. "Hey, lady! Stop!" The same voice came again. I assumed he was a guest, just as I was in the motel, spending the night in a layover motel, so I turned around affably to acknowledge that I had been called. The chilly wind intensified, and for a moment I suspected that the breeze had started to become stronger, an augury of the incoming storm in the starless night. My heart skipped. I was thankful that I did not have to drive through it. "You are working the doors. Why?" he asked as he marched towards me with visible concern on his face. "No, I don't. I'm a guest, just like you." I smiled as civilly as I could, even though his approach had begun to fill me with the keen sense of dread. In my assessment, he was very dark-skinned. He was athletic and had well-toned shoulders that was excellent for his clothes. His locks were heavy, and they were at least shoulder length from what I could discern in the night. I was just a middle-aged white woman. I shrugged off any concerns I feared for my safety, knowing he was a guest there. He moved closer some more, and I picked on a strange smell that came with his presence. It was a smell of utmost rottenness. I twitched, yet I remained in place. In my head, I could read the headlines. "Racism is still well and alive in America." I shivered to think that such a headline would be up because of me. Still, I could not shake off what my senses were picking up on. The foul smell grew stronger until it overwhelmed me.
I would have backed my ass
up. I moved away from the line of the wafting odor. "You silly little bitch," he cussed, immediately throwing me off. My expression was an immediate frown.
Took my key out,
my anxiety bloomed when I saw that his muscles twitched, and he would race me anywhere if it came to it. In my consternation, I still wondered why he would cuss at me with such venom. I tried to make sense of it, but nothing came readily to mind. "What? Do I know you?" I quizzed. "You saw it all. Now I have to kill you," he
Saw
said,
it all.
and the world all around me suddenly fell bleak. In the bleakness, I saw him produce a knife from a sheath
Oh,
on
so
his
you
pants,
was trying to
with
rob,
blade
huh?
stained by what I assumed was blood. My breath fell to a shallow, dry
Some
rasp.
people are just slow
The
when they
darkness was
robbing.
palpable, and I felt an unseen force pull me towards the sinister being, rooting my feet to the ground so I could not escape. The dry ball that came up from my stomach
I would have
returned
spit all
violently.
on him.
I retched and my entire being rocked with what I threw up. My sudden reaction bought me time because I saw that he hesitated. The bitter taste of my own vomit on my tongue was all it took to awaken my senses to the horrible danger in front of me. My entire being was alert to the horror of my lifetime. I spun around with agility I never knew I had in my limbs, and I raced towards the host's
Hell
inn.
yeah, when you
The
scared,
cool air of the night had
you
suddenly
unlock some
shrunk
stuff.
up, and even as I raced, feeling the breeze crash against my face, I was burning with panicking heat. "Please, help me!" "I'll
Next.
cut you up. You've seen it all. Don't fool me," he said. It was as though he was breathing down my ear. The horror crippled me, and my knees buckled as I ran. I was gasping in no time, and he drew close enough that I perceived his breath simmering down my neck. I ran faster in my head than my feet could carry me. Tears streamed down my face, and the breeze wiped it away before it could fully form. "Please," I blurted, numbed by terror. Perhaps my plea angered him, or he had been waiting for his moment, because as soon as I uttered the word, he struck out his hand and his knife slashed across my back. I tumbled over in a heap. "All of you women deserve to die," he
Oh, this
spat.
nigga
And in his
misogynistic,
eyes,
ain't he?
he had such sincere passion. Helpless and numb, with the pain of my slashed back slowly growing, I grew agitated at the thought of my life flashing before my eyes. He rolled the knife in his hands, and it fell perfectly for a stab. "Help me!" I cried frantically, to no one in particular. Laying on the floor of the motel premises and staring into the starless heavens,
Kinda
I
motel
wondered how my life would end in seconds.
ain't got no like
With
people,
all that I had left in me,
and they
I
got
yelled
trees
again as his knife
like
came
that.
down ferociously. "Please!"
Damn.
The piercing reverberation of a gunshot rocked the air, and my assailant wheezed. He looked down on his chest and clutched on a smoky spot. I realized he had been shot, and I cried out. He fell backwards and away from me, clutching to his chest, and I could scarcely breathe in the frenzy. "Damn you, bitch!" he cried, and with those words he fell quiet. I heard the footsteps of someone racing up to me, and I turned around, terrified by what had just happened. I saw the host and a look of worry on his beautiful dark-skinned face. "Hey, miss, you all right?" he asked me once, and looked at the man he had just shot dead. I nodded my head in the affirmative. "Thank you, sir," I managed to mutter when I could speak. "It's no bother. It's all my pleasure that you are all right," he sighed in relief. "You'll be needing first aid for that cut." What a nice gentleman. I checked into an old motel just outside of my town. Normally, this isn't the kind of place that I'd be caught dead in, but I didn't have a choice. I had finally left my husband, Grady, and I didn't have anywhere else to go. None of my relatives lived nearby, and I didn't want to stay at a hotel in town because Grady would find me. This place would be safe. At least that's what I told myself. I went to the front desk where an old man was standing. He had thick glasses that made him look bug-like, but he seemed friendly enough. He grinned, seemingly surprised to see a new guest at this time of night.
That's a creepy ass
He said he had a room available. I paid in cash, of course, because Grady would be able to see if I used my debit card. He asked me to sign his guest book, but I politely refused. I didn't want anything to trace back to me, not even my name in a book. It was a one-story motel, and my room was all the way at the end. I walked through the darkness, looking in all directions to make sure that Grady wasn't nearby. I passed by the swimming pool and noticed a man sitting in one of the folding chairs. It wasn't Grady, thank God, but it was a young guy who looked extremely suspicious. He was covered in tattoos and wore a stained wife beater. He smiled at me. but there was something in his eyes. Something
Boy.
that said he wanted to start trouble. Hi, I
Usually
said
they do.
awkwardly. Hey, he said. Are
This motherfucker
you?
wearing a wife
But he
beater.
couldn't finish his sentence. The words didn't come out. I got a really creepy vibe from him, so I waved once and then hurried off to room 13, my room. As soon as I got inside, I checked that the door was locked and breathed a sigh of relief. No one could get me in here. I didn't bring any stuff with me, not even a toothbrush, so I didn't have anything to unpack. I went to the bathroom to take a hot shower and wash off all my fears from today. The shower felt great, and I was really starting to calm down when I noticed a movement through the steamed-up window. I turned off the shower and looked outside. No one was there. It was just empty woods behind the hotel. I swear I saw something. No, I saw someone. The movement definitely looked like a person walking.
You already
Right
know
away,
somebody
I
peeking.
knew it was that strange man with all those tattoos. He had walked around back and spied on me.
Okay.
It had to be him. I toweled off and put my clothes back on. Then I went back to the front door to double check that it was locked. It was, but just as I twisted on the handle, someone on the other side pounded loudly on the door. I looked through the peephole, and it was that man again.
Fuck you won't, bro.
His dark eyes were somehow looking right at me, as if he could see me through the door. He pounded again.
I just
Go
started beating
away!
on his door.
I shouted.
Beating on the
But he
other
didn't.
side of the door.
He just stood there, with the angriest
But
look
it
on his
gave him
face.
the same treatment he given me.
But please, he stuttered. He couldn't finish his sentence. His expression got angrier, and he pounded even harder on the door. Go away!
called the
I
cops
said
already.
again. No, he answered. Something was very wrong with him.
I would have
This
been
was
called the
turning into a
cops.
terrible night. I had just escaped from my psycho husband, and now I
Now
had to
you
deal
in
with a
another
completely new psycho. Why did I
Holy
choose this
crap.
motel? Why couldn't I have gone to someplace nicer, safer? Through the peephole, I saw the man look all around to see if anyone was nearby.
Yeah, so he could start
Then he
kicking.
dug into his
oh,
pocket
shit.
and pulled out a gun. He was going to shoot his way inside.
Bro, get
I
a
raced
phone,
across the room
bro.
and grabbed the phone. I dialed 0, and the old man at reception answered. I told him that there was a crazy man with a gun. He needed to get somewhere safe and call 911. As I waited to hear his answer, I heard a loud gunshot right outside of my room.
Bro, go to the
Then I
bathroom.
heard a grunt of pain.
Oh,
I looked at my door and saw that it was still intact. He wasn't shooting his way in after all. I waited for a long moment until another bang rang out, then silence.
is he
Very
shooting
carefully,
himself?
I walked across the hotel room and went back to the door. I knew it was stupid to get so close, but I needed to see what had happened. I looked through the peephole and saw that the man was still there, but he wasn't alone. There was a body at his feet. I realized with a gasp that he was standing over Grady. He'd shot Grady. I opened the door partway, the chain
fuck?
still latched in place. I whispered through the crack, "What happened?" Sorry, the man said.
Oh, he has
I
a stuttering.
stutter when I get nervous. I was trying to tell you.
I don't know what it's
Someone
called.
was sneaking around outside your room, trying to get in, but I stopped him. With that, I opened the door all the way and ran out. The tattooed man wasn't a threat at all. He was here to save me. I wrapped him in a big hug and thanked him. Right below us, Grady was bleeding out. There was 2 bullet holes in his stomach. I guess the man at the front desk had called the police, because within a minute, 2 cop cars pulled into the parking lot. Their sirens were blaring. I didn't want to shoot him, the tattooed man said. It's okay, I told him. You were protecting me. As the police rushed towards us, I took one last look at Grady. He groaned. With his last bit of strength, he looked up at me. He opened his mouth to say something, and then he went still. I was finally free of him, and I was done being scared.
Okay. Got the hero. We got the hero. The hero saves the day. That's pretty cool, I guess. Weird story, you know? They never talked about him. Well, I guess, cause home dude, he had a stuttering problem. But yeah. Alright. I take it. thank you guys for watching this awesome 3 true motel horror stories animated with me. And yeah, we out. Peace.